I'm not usually the type to share a hotel room with someone I barely know, but there I was, stuck in a tiny two-bedroom with Jake during spring break, and honestly, it was way more awkward than I expected. You know how sometimes you think, okay, this is just a simple favor, and then it turns into one of those moments you can't unsee or forget? Yeah, that was me. So a bit of backstory. I'm Nick, 23, just finished my junior year in college. My group of friends was planning this big spring break trip to this beach town about 6 hours away. I was stoked until, last minute, one of the guys bailed because of work. That's when Jake texted me out of the blue. We'd met a few times at parties around campus. He's the kind of guy who's easy to talk to, with that laid-back vibe and a smile that somehow made you feel like you already knew him. It was never anything serious between us, just casual hellos and occasional conversations about music or classes. Anyway, Jake offered to cover the missing spot on the trip, and because the hotel was booked solid, we'd have to share a room. 2 beds, sure, but still, sharing space with someone who isn't your roommate? That's a little too close for comfort, at least for me. I was a bit nervous, but mostly I thought, hey, it's just a few days, no big deal. We hit the road together, and the vibe was chill. Jake's easygoing chatter made the drive fly by, and honestly, I was surprised at how comfortable I felt around him. He wasn't just the frat party guy the first thought he was. He had this genuine side that caught me off guard. We talked about everything from bad dates to our favorite movies. By the time we got to the hotel, I was thinking maybe this trip wouldn't be so awkward after all. The hotel room was small but decent. 2 twin beds, a tiny bathroom, a mini fridge that barely worked. We agreed to keep things simple. Each sleep on our own side. Respect the space, don't be weird. Pretty straightforward rules, right? But then, the first night came. I was already half asleep when I felt it. Someone shifting in the bed next to me. I opened my eyes, and there was Jake, right there, inching closer to my side of the bed like the line between your side and my side was just a suggestion. I froze for a second, heart pounding, and then he smiled that stupid, charming smile of his and said, "Hope you don't mind if I crash a bit closer. The bed's kinda small." That's when I realized this trip was going to be way more complicated and way more interesting than I ever imagined. I blinked, trying to process what just happened. Jake inching onto my side of the bed wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I said keep things simple. My first instinct was to scoot away, make sure there was some space between us, but then I caught his eyes, those warm, easy eyes that somehow made everything else fade out for a second. His voice was low and casual, like he hadn't just breached every unspoken boundary I was clinging to. "It's kinda small," he repeated, with that half smirk. "Hope you don't mind." I wanted to protest, but honestly, I didn't have the energy. The bed was narrow, and yeah, it felt like a stupid thing to get worked up over. So I just nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's fine." What surprised me was how natural it felt. Not awkward or tense, just quiet. He settled in closer, and even though part of me was yelling, "Personal space," the other part was oddly calm, like this was exactly where I was supposed to be. I glanced at him, and he caught me looking. "Don't worry," he said softly, "I'm not gonna bite." His joke made me laugh quietly, and that laugh broke the weird tension. Before I knew it, we were just 2 guys lying side by side on separate halves of a tiny bed, neither really wanting to make a big deal out of it, but both feeling the weight of something unspoken hanging between us. That night, sleep felt distant. I kept catching myself watching Jake, noticing the way his eyelashes rested against his cheeks, or how his chest rose and fell steady and calm. I felt weirdly protective, like I wanted to reach out and brush a stray hair off his forehead, but held back because, well, boundaries, right? The next morning, things didn't exactly go back to normal. Over breakfast, Jake was his usual casual self, joking about how the tiny bed made us official roommates, but I caught a flicker of something more in his glance when he thought I wasn't paying attention. We spent the day on the beach with the rest of the group, but I found myself drifting closer to him whenever we sat down. It was subtle stuff. Shoulder brushes, sharing a towel, laughing at the same dumb jokes. I wasn't sure if he noticed what I was doing, but I got the feeling he did, and that he wasn't exactly unhappy about it. Later, when the sun started to dip and the group broke up to get ready for dinner, Jake and I ended up alone in the hotel room. I was changing when he walked in, holding 2 beers. "Thought you might want one," he said, tossing one to me. I caught it, and the moment stretched out longer than it should have. There was this charge in the air, like something was waiting for one of us to say or do something. I found myself just staring at him, trying to figure out if I was imagining the way his eyes held mine a bit longer than necessary. So, Jake started, setting his beer down on the tiny table by the window. "About last night." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, sorry for the intrusion." "Nah, don't apologize," he said, stepping a little closer. "I kinda liked it. Being close." I felt my chest tighten. "Yeah? Me too," he smiled, that same easy smile that made my stomach flip. Maybe we don't have to keep so many rules on this trip. My heart started beating faster. Maybe it was the beer, or maybe it was just Jake's presence, but it felt like everything between us was suddenly electric, like the air itself shifted. Before I could say anything else, he leaned in, just a little, and I caught the scent of his cologne mixed with the salty ocean breeze. It was subtle, but intoxicating. I could feel the heat from his body, close enough to make my skin tingle. The room felt smaller, the space between us disappearing. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this, but I also wasn't sure I wanted to stop it. Then, just as if he was reading my mind, Jake said quietly, "Hey, whatever happens, no pressure. Just us figuring this out." And honestly, that was the best part. The idea that maybe we were both as clueless as the other, just trying to find some kind of connection in this tiny, cramped hotel room during spring break. I raised my beer to him. "To figuring things out." He clinked his bottle against mine, and in that moment, the whole trip felt different. Like maybe this wasn't just a random favor or an awkward situation. Maybe it was the start of something neither of us saw coming. The next day, I woke up with a weird mix of excitement and nerves tangled in my chest. It was like I had crossed some invisible line with Jake, and now everything felt different. But the crazy thing, we didn't act like anything had changed. At least, not on the surface. We met up with the group for breakfast, and Jake slid in beside me like nothing was going on, cracking jokes and making everyone laugh. I caught him sneaking glances at me every now and then, and I could swear he had that same mischievous smile from the night before, like he was daring me to say something or make a move. After breakfast, a few of us decided to hit the boardwalk. The sun was out, the air smelled like fried food and salt water, and the whole place was buzzing with that classic spring break chaos. I was walking next to Jake when he suddenly grabbed my hand. Just like that, no warning. It caught me completely off guard. I stopped mid-step, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I looked over at him, and he just shrugged, grinning like he'd just won some secret bet. "What?" he asked, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't speak at first, so I just squeezed his hand back. And honestly, I didn't want to let go. For the rest of the day, we stayed close, slipping into this easy rhythm where the rest of the world faded out. We rode the Ferris wheel, sharing that cramped little seat at the top, with a view of the whole beach town sprawling below us. I could feel his leg pressed against mine, and it made my stomach do that freaky little flip again. Later, at this crowded arcade, we teamed up for some silly games, trying to win enough tickets for a dumb plastic toy. I don't think either of us cared about the prize, but it gave us an excuse to be goofy and laugh. Somewhere between the skee ball and the air hockey, I realized I wasn't just having fun. I was having the best kind of fun, the kind that makes you want to remember every tiny moment. That night, back in the hotel room, things felt charged, like the space between us was a live wire. We didn't rush or push. It was just this slow, steady pull. We sat on our beds, Jake playing a playlist on his phone while I scrolled through some photos from earlier in the day. Without really thinking, I patted the bed next to me. "Come here." He hesitated for a second, then shrugged and moved over. The bed creaked under our weight, and suddenly our knees were touching. I could feel the warmth radiating off him, and it was a little scary, but mostly amazing. "I'm glad you came on this trip," I said quietly, not looking at him but feeling like I should say it anyway. Jake smiled, that soft, genuine smile that made my chest tighten. "Me too. I was looking forward to it, but I didn't expect this." "Yeah," I admitted. "Me neither." For a while, we just sat there, the silence between us comfortable and full of possibilities. Then, without warning, Jake reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from my forehead. His fingers lingered for a moment, and I swear my whole body went on high alert. "Can I?" he asked, voice low. I nodded before I even knew what I was agreeing to. And then he leaned in. The first kiss was soft, tentative, like testing the waters, but it sent this jolt through me that I wasn't prepared for. His lips were warm and familiar, and for a second, all the noise in my head quieted. When we pulled apart, we were both grinning like idiots. "Okay," Jake said, breathless. "So, does this mean I'm officially not just a roommate anymore?" I laughed, the sound shaking off some of my nerves. "Yeah, I think it does. We stayed up late, just talking and laughing, and figuring out what this new thing between us meant. It wasn't perfect or scripted, just two guys in a small hotel room, trying something out and seeing where it would go. The rest of the trip felt like a blur of moments like that. Unexpected, electric, and real. I kept catching myself wondering how I ended up here, sharing a hotel room with a guy who didn't stay on his side of the bed but somehow stole my heart instead. By the time the last day rolled around, I knew this was more than just a spring break fling. It was the start of something I never saw coming but didn't want to let go. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see where it would lead. The morning of our last full day came with a strange mix of excitement and a low-key sadness I didn't expect. I mean, we'd spent nearly every waking moment together this trip, and now the clock was ticking down to when we'd have to pack up and go back to real life. Back to campus, back to the usual routines where maybe we'd pretend none of this happened. Jake and I woke up later than usual, the sunlight sneaking through the curtains and casting lazy shadows across the room. I was still half tangled in the sheets when he nudged me with his foot, a mischievous grin on his face. "Race you to the coffee shop downstairs?" he challenged. I groaned, knowing full well I probably wouldn't win, but I wasn't about to let him think I was backing down. "You're on." We threw on some clothes and made our way down to the hotel lobby, the air thick with that fresh morning smell of brewed coffee and pastries. The place was surprisingly empty, which was nice. Gave us a moment away from the noise of the group and the crowds on the beach. As we sat with our cups, Jake leaned over the table, eyes sparkling like he had some secret. "So what's your plan after this trip? I mean, besides pretending you weren't the guy who let me crash in your bed." I rolled my eyes but smiled. "Yeah, that's definitely going to be hard to live down. But seriously, I'm thinking about asking for an internship in the city over the summer." "That's cool," he said, nodding. "I'm sticking around campus mostly, working part-time, trying not to fail my classes." I laughed. "Sounds like a plan." There was a pause, that comfortable kind where neither of us felt pressure to fill the silence. But then Jake's smile softened, and he shifted in his seat. "You know," he said, voice just above a whisper, "I'm really glad we did this. I mean, the whole trip, the room sharing, the whatever this is between us, my heart did that stupid flip again." I wasn't sure if it was nerves or just the way he said it, but I felt like I was standing at the edge of something new. "Me too," I said, honestly. I wasn't expecting any of this, but I'm glad it happened. We finished our coffee, lingering in that quiet space where words weren't necessary. When we walked back to the hotel, the sun was higher now, warming the sidewalks and the sea breeze picking up. Later that afternoon, Jake and I found ourselves sitting on the beach. The group scattered around us, but it felt like it was just the two of us in this little bubble. We kicked at the sand, watching the waves roll in and out. So, I said, "What happens next? After we go back home?" Jake shrugged, poking at the sand with his foot. "I don't know. I guess we figure it out. Maybe we keep seeing each other. Maybe we don't. I'm not into rushing anything." "Yeah," I agreed. "I want to see where this goes. No pressure." He smiled, that easy, genuine smile I was starting to feel addicted to. "Good. Because I'm not going to let you off the hook that easily." The sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange. As we headed back to the hotel, I realized how much the trip had shifted something inside me. Maybe it was the way Jake didn't stay on his side of the bed, or the way he held my hand on the boardwalk. Or maybe it was just the fact that I let myself be vulnerable with someone who seemed to get it without needing 1,000 words. That night, we packed up our things, the small hotel room feeling emptier than before. We sat on the beds, both quiet, not sure how to say goodbye, or if we even wanted to. Jake broke the silence first. "Hey, no matter what happens, this trip was real for me. You made it real." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Same here." Before we left the room, Jake pulled me into a hug. It was the kind of hug that said everything without words. Hope, promise, maybe even a little bit of fear. As I closed the door behind us, I couldn't help but feel that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Back on campus the day after we got home, everything felt a little bit off. The usual buzz of classes and dorm life was there, but all I could think about was how quiet my room felt without Jake crashing on my bed, or, more accurately, not staying on his side of it. Weird how sharing a cramped hotel room for a few days could mess with your sense of space so much. I hadn't really figured out what to say to him after we split from spring break, and for a minute, texting felt like trying to unwrap a present without ripping the paper. I didn't want to mess it up, but I also didn't want to pretend nothing had happened. So I waited, and then one afternoon, my phone buzzed. "Coffee? I owe you a proper apology for invading your side of the bed." Jake's message read, with a little smiley face that made my chest tighten. I grinned. "Only if you promise to keep invading." His reply was immediate. "Deal. Meet you at the usual spot in 20?" 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from him at our campus coffee shop, the place already buzzing with students cramming for finals or just trying to survive. We ordered the usual black coffee for me, a caramel latte for him, and for the first time since that trip, it felt like we were settling into something more normal. So I started. "What's the plan?" "For us, I mean." He took a sip of his latte, looking thoughtful. "Honestly, I don't want this to be a one-time thing. I'm enjoying whatever this is between us. It's easy, you know." I nodded, feeling a wave of relief. "Me too, I guess. I just didn't want to mess it up by rushing or overthinking." Jake smiled, that same easy grin that made you forget all the noise around you. "No pressure. We take it as it comes." That afternoon, we walked around campus together, just talking and laughing like old friends, but with this new layer of something else. It wasn't just friendship anymore, but it wasn't a full-on relationship yet either. It was that fuzzy, exciting in-between that makes you feel like everything's possible. Over the next few weeks, we kept finding reasons to hang out. Study sessions that ended with takeout, late-night walks where the city lights were the only witnesses, and quiet mornings on the campus lawn where we'd just lie back and watch the clouds. One night, after a long day of classes, Jake called me, voice casual but with a hint of something softer underneath. "Want to come over? I'm making dinner." I agreed, and when I got to his place, it was clear he was way better at cooking than I am. The kitchen smelled like garlic and something spicy, and we ended up sharing a bottle of wine over a meal that was definitely worth bragging about. After dinner, we moved to the couch, sitting close enough that our legs brushed. The conversation faded, replaced by this easy silence filled with unspoken feelings. Then Jake reached out, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my arm. "Nick," he said quietly, "I like this. Really like it." My heart jumped. "Me too." He smiled, then leaned in, and this time, the kiss wasn't tentative. It was sure, soft, but full of promise. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "Let's not rush," he whispered. "Let's just see where we go." And I knew right then I was ready for whatever, wherever that might be. School kept us busy, but Jake and I found our rhythm. Not perfect, not without bumps, but real. We had our awkward moments, like when I accidentally called him by my roommate's name, Smooth, or when we argued over stupid stuff because, well, we were still figuring this all out. But the best part? The small stuff. Texts that made me smile at random times, late-night talks about dreams and fears. The way he'd hold my hand in the middle of a crowded hallway like the rest of the world didn't matter. One weekend, we took a short trip to a nearby town, just the two of us. It wasn't spring break, not crowded or wild, just quiet streets, coffee shops, and long conversations on park benches. There, away from everything, Jake opened up about his past, the stuff he didn't usually share with anyone. I wasn't sure if I could do this, he admitted, being with someone. Not just sleep-togethers or whatever, something real. I reached over, squeezing his hand. Me neither. But here we are. He looked at me, eyes shining, and I knew that whatever had started in that cramped hotel room on spring break had grown into something much bigger. I'm still figuring it out, honestly. What this means, where it's going. But one thing's for sure. Sharing that tiny hotel room was the start of something I never expected, and I'm grateful every day that he didn't stay on his side. About a month after that weekend getaway, things started to feel like they were settling into something a little more serious, or at least something that needed a bit more clarity. Jake and I had spent so much time in this comfortable, we'll see where this goes zone that I started wondering if he was as invested as I was. I mean, it's easy to fall into that casual vibe when everything's new and exciting, but real life, it often asks for a little more. One evening, we were sprawled out on my couch after a long day of classes, half watching some dumb comedy rerun while our legs were tangled together. Jake was scrolling on his phone when he suddenly sat up, looking a bit more serious. "Hey, can I ask you something?" he said, voice low but steady. I glanced over at him. "Shoot." He hesitated for just a second, which was unusual for him. Usually, he was all ease and confidence. "Do you think this, us, it's something real? Or are we just having fun until summer hits and we go back to whatever?" I swallowed, feeling my heart speed up. I'd been asking myself that same question but hadn't really voiced it. "Honestly, I think it could be real. I want it to be." Jake nodded, relief flickering across his face. "Yeah, me too. I guess I just wasn't sure if I was reading things right." That night, we talked long after the TV had shut off, and the room was dark except for the streetlights casting soft glows through the blinds. We went over what we wanted, what scared us, what we hoped for, and for the first time, it felt like we were on the same page. It was this weird mix of vulnerability and hope, like we were building something carefully instead of just letting it float. A couple of weeks later, we hit a small bump that, in retrospect, was probably inevitable. Jake and I had different summer plans. He was sticking around town, working a part-time job and taking some classes, while I had scored that internship in the city I mentioned earlier. The thought of being apart brought up this weird knot in my stomach, like losing the easy access to him would mean losing something vital. One night, over dinner at his place, I finally brought it up. "How do you think this will work, with me gone during the week?" Jake shrugged, but I caught the flicker of unease behind his eyes. "I don't know. I'm not great at long distance, to be honest." "Neither am I," admitted. "But I don't want to just let this go because it gets hard." Jake reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Me neither. We can figure it out. We always do. We made a plan to see each other on weekends, to text and call as much as possible, and to be honest about how things were feeling. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. The first few weeks apart were rougher than I expected. I missed waking up next to Jake, the way he'd steal the blanket or make stupid jokes to get me out of bed. I missed the casual comfort of just being around him. Our texts kept me going, little snapshots of his day, dumb memes, good morning, and good night messages that made me smile even on the hardest days. One weekend, I was driving back to town after a long week at the internship when I got a text from Jake. "Meet me at the park bench where we watched the sunset that weekend." I smiled and replied, "On my way." When I pulled up, he was already there, sitting on that same bench with a coffee in hand and that unmistakable grin. I hopped out of the car and joined him, the evening breeze cool but comforting. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sky turn from orange to pink to deep purple. Then Jake turned to me, eyes serious. "Look, I don't want to pretend like this is easy. I'm scared sometimes. Of losing you, of not being enough." I took his hand, feeling the strength and honesty in that moment. "I'm scared too, but I don't want fear to make us back away from something good." He squeezed my hand tighter. "Thank you for sticking around." "Always," I said. That night on the drive back, I realized that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it's about showing up. Even when it's hard, even when you're scared, it's about the small moments, like sharing a bench, holding hands, and saying the things that matter. We don't have all the answers. Maybe we never will, But with Jake, I feel like I'm starting to figure out what it means to really be seen and to see someone else in return. And honestly, that's more than enough for me. A few months later, after the internship wrapped up and summer was winding down, I found myself back in town, standing outside Jake's apartment. There was something comforting about the way the street looked in the late afternoon light. Familiar, steady, like a quiet promise. Jake opened the door before I even knocked, grinning like he'd been waiting. "Hey," he said simply. "Hey," I replied, stepping inside. We fell into that easy rhythm again, the kind that doesn't need words to fill the spaces, where just being near each other feels like home. That night, after a long walk and some takeout dinner on his balcony, Jake turned to me, eyes soft and serious. "You know, I was scared when this all started. Scared it'd be a fling, or that we'd mess it up. But now, I'm really glad we gave this a chance." I smiled, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through, the late-night talks, the distance, the uncertainty, and how it all led us here together. "Me too," I said. "I'm glad we didn't just settle for easy. I want to keep figuring this out with you." He reached out, fingers brushing my cheek gently. "Yeah, me too." In that moment, I realized this wasn't about perfect timing or flawless beginnings. It was about two people choosing to be real with each other, choosing to stay even when things got complicated. That kind of choice feels rare and incredible. We didn't need grand declarations or dramatic gestures. Just a quiet, steady knowing that this was something worth holding on to. And as we stood there, the city humming softly around us, I felt a warmth inside, a deep sense of rightness. We'd started off sharing a cramped hotel room, unsure and uncertain, but now we were building something solid, something real. That night, as I drifted off to sleep with Jake's hand in mine, I knew this was just the beginning. Not because everything's perfect, but because we're in it together. And honestly, that's all I ever wanted.